We have a quorum. We're starting a little bit late, but I think we'll get caught up on our agenda today. I want to call this meeting to order and welcome everyone to our USDB board meeting and study session. Or no? Yeah, good it is. I'm on. Okay, I'm good. I'm seeking the first agenda item that we've got to act on is approval of the meeting minutes. I'm seeking a motion to approve the minutes on the October 5th, 2018 meeting.
So moved.
I have a motion. Do I have a second? Second. Any discussion? Seeing none, let's vote. All in favor say aye. Those opposed? Voting was unanimous. We do have a public comment, and Board Member Reeby, can you turn on maybe something on that one end there? We have a Laurie Everett that's here, I think. They signed up for
Called me just a few days ago.
call to be on this. I'm not seeing Laurie here today, so we don't have any public comment. Thank you, Board Member Reeby. Very good job. Okay, I guess we'll invite the Finance Director, Carl Empey. Let me get your mic turned on. Monthly budget report.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, Vice Chair, and board members. It's a pleasure to be here. Our financial report is as of September 26th. We had received, in terms of revenue or inflows, $7.7 million. Our expenditures through the same time period totaled $6.3 million. So we had excess revenues and inflows over our expenses. Nothing on the horizon that is a surprise, and all is going well. Number of students served is 1,577 as of September, the end of September. Our land grant enrichment fund balance as of September 26 is $1,259,000, and our donated fund balance is $2,011,000. The next attachment is just the detail supporting those numbers that we went through, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Okay, board members, any questions of Finance Director MP regarding this report? I'm not seeing any, and
Okay.
and I just still want to compliment how well you're doing on keeping up on this. Are you
Thank you.
having any? Is there any challenges that we can help you with on our end?
Your staff has been tremendous support for us. We've relied on Scott and Deborah on a number of occasions, and they've been very helpful. So I appreciate your offer, and because they're doing that, and it's very helpful to us.
Okay. Thank you, Superintendent. Do you have anything to add to the report? Okay, very good. We'll just moving right along. Next is our budget priorities. Turn the time over to Superintendent Joel Coleman.
Okay, our budget priorities this year are pretty simple. We only have two. We actually have three, but one is required in code, so we don't submit it as an increased funding request. But that is the steps and lane increases for our educators. And the other one is the second year of a 3-year one-time request for USIMAC of $500,000, and this is the second year. We anticipate we'll apply again next year, and that's been part of our sustainability plan there. And then the last one was to fund the services we're going to be assuming for the large school districts that want USDB to take over their deaf or their blind services for their districts. And that one is in the amount, we actually submitted $2.3 million, but it's more like 1 million. Is that right, Carl?
That's right.
The staff here helped us. We went through the numbers again, and we actually reduced that by $100,000. So those are our budget priorities for this year. I'd be happy to answer any questions if you have those.
Okay, questions from board members on the budget priority? Vice Chair Brittany Cummins.
Do you mind going into a little bit more detail and explaining the opt-out request or for this particular thing? Can you explain the rule behind it and how that funding will be used?
Yes.
There's just been a lot of confusion and a lot of questions that have come up.
That's a great question, and I anticipate there will be more as we move on, especially when we get to the legislature. So just by way of history, about the time I was on the state school board, just before that, I think the State Board of Education passed a rule that changed the way USDB interacts with the districts. Prior to that time, USDB just served all of the deaf and the blind kids in the state. For whatever reason, there were some difficult relationships, and some of the districts kind of complained and wanted to take over those services on their own. So the board passed a rule that the largest districts in the state would now be responsible for providing deaf and blind services in addition to all of their other special ed services. And the way they defined big districts was to say, if your district has more than 3% of the kids in the state in it, you're one of the big ones. And so from that time on, those districts have done their own thing. Some of them have contracted with us and just paid us to do it for them, or with other servers, or just hired their own people to do it. As you know, over the last 5 years or so, USDB has really made an effort to improve our relationships with the school districts, and we've had great success with that as partners. And so consequently, in the last couple of years, we've had a couple of those districts that have approached us and said, is there any way we could just go back to the way it was? We really would like to have all of your resources at our disposal and have you just take over our deaf and our blind services for kids that need it. And so last year, we approached the board and said, board, would you consider maybe creating an opportunity for those who want to come back, and let those who want to continue doing everything themselves to keep doing that. And so as a result of that, you changed the board rule and allowed them to request that, subject to funding from the legislature for us to assume those services. And there were 4 districts that approached us this year and asked us to do that. We're submitting a request for 3 of them. The other one we don't think is quite ready yet, and we're going to work with them over this year so that we can help make sure that we'll be able to actually take over what they're doing and do it successfully. The 3 districts are Nebo District down in southern part of Utah County, and Washington District, St. George area, and the Canyons District here in Salt Lake Valley. And so this funding request will just fund the positions when they shift from those districts over to USDB. We will just assume those positions and be able to serve those kids. And then in future years, we may have other districts that apply as well.
A follow-up. Oh, just one sec. A follow-up, and then I'll do we turn your, yeah, thank you.
So if the funding is not received, then you're not able to provide the services to these 3 requested districts?
Yeah, we don't have the funds to take on. I don't know how many total FTE is it right now, Carl, between those 3 districts?
It's over 500 students, and I'm trying to remember the FTEs.
Somewhere near 20.
21 or 22 FTEs.
Yeah, so we don't have the capacity to assume 22 new people without additional funding.
Can I ask one follow-up question? Sorry.
Yeah, one other follow-up,
Okay.
please.
And then, so if another district was to pop on and apply, additional funding would need to be requested just as districts request, you either add or subtract, is that correct? The funding?
Yes, and really what we did is we put a deadline of October 1st each year so that we can have those requests before the legislative information is needed by the governor's office and then the LFAs subsequently. So it would be each year, if they want to do that for the following year, they have to meet that deadline.
Board Member Cannon?
So the law said if they had 3% of the state's children, they could be the opt-out, and 9 districts were eligible. So, can you tell us which 9 are eligible for this?
I think I can. Of the 3 that have requested us to take over, which is Washington, Nebo, and
Canyons?
And then there's Alpine, Jordan, Salt Lake, Granite, Weber, Davis. Cache? No. So I got Salt Lake. Is that 9?
1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, that's it. You did it.
That's it. Those are the big ones.
I'm
And-
glad we have our fingers to count on.
I think those 9 districts have, like, I saw a number one time, it was like 83 or 84% of the students in the state are in those 9 districts. And we already serve all of the other school districts, the other 31, and all the 140 charter schools in the state at no cost to them.
Maybe I'll ask you this too.
Sorry, there you go.
Has there been any follow-up by the state or USDB or any organization to see about how well services to kids have been provided by the opting out entities?
Yes, that's a really good question. We have found that there is a variety of service patterns across the state. There are some districts who are already serving the students very well. They have hired super capable people of their own or contracted with us to do it, and their caseloads are appropriate and their kids are getting great services. There are others who are severely underserving students, and some of them admittedly are doing it, and they've been very candid with us and said, we really know that we should do a better job, but for this reason or that, it's really difficult. And we think USDB can probably do a better job because you have a lot of these employees throughout the state. Others, we believe, are underserving them, but they haven't told us that they think they are yet. And so we're trying to be supportive to them and encourage them to at least let us help analyze their caseloads, even if they don't ask us to do their services. And we're trying to be a supportive partner with them in that way.
Can I follow up?
Follow up.
So then the other thing, you mentioned the funding issue. So I'm not quite sure, how are deaf and blind students funded in the districts that opted out? And because you said when they're coming back, that will require additional funding. So apparently those districts aren't getting supplemental funding for those kids, or will you just sort that out for me?
Yeah, if they have to serve their own students, they have to come up with that money out of their budget, like any student. They receive the WPU for those students, and they may receive special ed funding as well. The way USDB is funded is not by the WPU formula. USDB is just a line item appropriation from the legislature each year, and based on our students' needs, driven by their IEP goals. And so the funding would shift over to us, but if we're serving the students in those districts still, they still would retain the WPU for that student. We would just send our teacher, like we do to all the other school districts and charter schools, we would just send the teacher to there, either the teacher of the visually impaired or the teacher of the deaf or the interpreter. We would send it to them, and they wouldn't have to pay us and reimburse us for that because our budget would be sufficient.
Okay, thank you.
Board Member Reeby, the lights aren't picking up who you are, so I'll click and then I'll sight down and try to find something red. So Board Member Reeby.
Kind of expanding on Board Member Cannon's point. So in the schools right now, are we doing any kind of outreach so that parents understand that the service is available? Because there is a disconnect right now. I don't think parents that have been involved in PIP, understand, but that's a pretty high need. So then we have kids that are kind of maybe moving into the state or didn't really get picked up by PIP, but definitely have a high need once they start to get into kindergarten. How can we get these kids that are kind of slipping through the cracks, who could definitely benefit from your services? I have a kid's face in my head right now, and I don't think his mom understands, or his dad or his legal guardian understands how to get in touch with you. Is there a way that we can reach out two parents through this Granite District, Weber District, all the districts that you mentioned, so that they could maybe reach out to you guys? How can we make that less of a problem slipping through the cracks? Because there are lots of kids that aren't blind, but they do have really, really drastic sight issues, and same with hearing. So
Board Member Eby, you're asking the exact question that we've been asking since I got there, and that's a really good point. And we have a delicate relationship with the districts. We're trying to make sure that they realize we're not trying to compete with them, but we're their partner. At the same time, we have an agreement that we won't recruit kids from those schools. Students come to us through those districts. When the district calls up and says, we've got a student who needs your services, then we join the IEP team and we're there 100% to help support them. And so the short answer is no. With those districts, we don't really do a lot of outreach because it's the school district's job. But we're trying to encourage them and help them to know we're here to help if you want to. Mm-hmm. And maybe the associate superintendents have some comments on that too, because they're right in the trenches doing this.
So I'd like to follow up by saying that, I understand that we don't want to be recruiting and pulling services from different places, but, I mean, this is all about the kids, and this is all about them getting the services they need. And I can tell you from teaching for almost 20 years now, I have had kids who were blind and deaf to a very large extent, but they were super mobile. And as a teacher, I would try to find the resources for them, but to have to deal with doctors and within the district to, piecemeal these services together where you guys would have a one-stop shopping situation. I would like to see that maybe teachers were made aware of this, or how we can better foster that relationship, because it really is the kids. Like, we really need to get these services to these kids as fast as we can. For me to get a 5th and 6th grader that was almost blind and almost deaf was just distressing to me. He had no glasses, he had no hearing aids, and it took us a year to get him the services he needed. I mean, that's criminal. So that's my question, and it's long, and I'm sorry that it's not more succinct.
Before we have your associate speak on this, help me understand, Superintendent. The environment it's about local control and parents' choice. That is like step one, or the first pathway, and then parents can choose, and or the way communication happens within the district. It's not really a plan B, but it's another choice, USDB. Is that
Yeah,
safe
and
to
your board
say?
rule requires them to invite us whenever they have a student with vision or hearing issues, to invite us to the IEP meeting and help us be aware of that. But we don't have control until we're invited or notified about it.
Right.
Carolyn's just dying to say something.
Yeah, I guess I am, because you're right. We are supposed to be invited to those initial IEPs, and that's just recent, though. So some districts are really good now at inviting us to those IEPs, but other districts aren't there yet. It's not quite there yet. The other thing that's been really helpful from USBE is that we receive some information that we get from the data, the student information system, that gives us their families' emails. And so we're in the process of sending out information like summer camps, short-term programs, for extracurricular activities, study abroad, to get those emails out to parents so that they are aware, hey, we're here, we have these great supplemental services, and that's been helpful too. It's just beginning, though.
Do you have a follow-up?
Yeah, so I understand your point saying that it's a choice and local control, but it's hard to have a choice if you don't know what your choices are. It's like this hidden menu behind the scenes. And I appreciate the outreach you've been doing with your media, but I mean, it is really, really upsetting to see people who really need these services and don't know. And the hard part is that when you're a parent, you're overwhelmed, and as you look back, you see what you could have done differently. And I'd like to have them have those options prior to looking back and saying, I wish I had, because meeting these needs sooner, just like in the PIP program, is way better than meeting them later.
Yeah. We totally agree with what you're saying. It's been a grave concern of ours. One of the other things we did, there is data that we were able to get from the board office that tells us the name of students who are deaf and deaf-blind across the state of Utah. Doesn't matter where they're located, but the only limitation with that data is it's only students who are qualifying under those disability categories. We're not capturing the ones that are multi-disabled, and we're not capturing the ones that are 504 students. But the list that we do have, we're calling. We have somebody on staff.
Emails.
No, it's a phone call. She's calling them on the phone and saying, hey, we're the Utah Schools for the Deaf and the Blind. Just want to let you know we're there. We've got some services. We have extracurricular activities that all students that are deaf and blind have access to across the state. Is there anything we can do to help? We have actually had quite a few parents that have said, please, yes, I would really like your help. And there's some others that said, nope, I'm good. Thank you. I'll keep you in mind. It's our way of trying to get to it. But it is hard, as Superintendent Coleman expressed. We don't want to overstep our boundaries and push things in, but we do appreciate, we had a board rule change that said we are to be invited to every initial IEP. Be lovely if it also said every re-eval too, because then we can be there, because every 3 years you revisit those IEPs, and it might be a nice time to bring USDB back in again. Anything we can do, any recommendations you have that we have not already explored, we're happy to also explore those too.
So my other struggle is it's the Utah for the School and the Deaf and the Blind. You don't service just deaf and blind people. You service visually impaired people and
Deaf and
hearing
blind.
impaired people. And so that's, I think, a problem that we need to address as well, because you have great services for visually impaired students, and I think that needs to be communicated. And I'm not saying for you, but as a state, I think we need to start really looking as if there's a resource that needs to be available for everyone, because visually impaired kids don't consider themselves blind, but then they don't look to you as a resource. So I would like to see that dot connected, because that is a struggle that I've seen when I said, oh, have you reached out to this organization? I'm like, my kid's not blind. I'm like, well, they don't really just do that.
Right.
So.
Any help would be appreciated.
Okay, let me remind you where we're at on our agenda here. Excuse me. We're talking about the budget priorities, and I am seeking a motion to approve the budget priority, excuse me, the budget priorities. What's on our docs, it says 2.3 million, but it's really 2.1. So from what the superintendent said,
Mr. Chair, can I just clarify that? The 2.3 for the opting out is right. It was 2.1 million for the steps and lanes
Oh, okay.
calculation.
All
So
right.
the memo has the correct amounts for the opting out and for USIMAC.
okay, so then it's according to plan.
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, so I am seeking a motion to, Board Member Cannon, there we go.
Yeah, I move that we approve the two budget priorities for USDB in the amount of $2,382,500.
Okay, we have a motion, do we have a second? Second, discussion to the motion. Vice Chair Brittany Cummins.
So when we say 2, does that mean we need to add 3 just so that the steps and lanes are included in that? Is that,
Well, there,
or are they just automatic?
That
So
was-
it's
that's-
just, it doesn't need to be prioritized?
Yeah, that's required for us to submit that number by formula in the code, so I don't think you have to approve that.
that's correct. But when we see, after we approve this and we do see what's in there, that'll be
Yeah.
included. Okay. Any further discussion? Seeing none, let's vote on approving USDB's fiscal year 2020, excuse me, budget priorities. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Voting was unanimous. Maybe with the way this conversation is going, maybe I can, if the board doesn't have any objection, I can work with Superintendent Joe Coleman on a follow-up to our rule to put a communication out to all of our LEAs and remind them of that rule and invite the LEAs if they have any questions on it. So we're kind of putting a reminder out there that we have as a board, we have an expectation regarding this topic. Okay, I'm not seeing any except it doesn't really take, it's not like we're calling them out.
I did call each of them individually, each of the superintendents, and told them, and that these are the 4 that responded this year, so we'll keep doing that.
Okay. All right. Next up, we We have our Deaf Parent Infant Program.
Thank you.
Would you want to introduce the director
Yeah, well,
and?
board members, this is Stephanie Morgan, who's the director of our Deaf Parent Infant Program. They serve the babies age 0 to 3 years old. And I asked Stephanie if she would do a brief presentation for you today and an overview of this, because we received notice that a few of you as board members had gotten an email from a parent who was concerned about having both listening and spoken language and sign language at toddler groups with us. And they made a bunch of claims in their email that maybe didn't really accurately reflect what's going on. And so I wanted Stephanie to be here, and she could ask questions. You can ask her questions. She'll give you an overview here of her program, and then you can ask questions to her, and we can do that all together here in a public meeting.
Hello, everyone. Okay. Hello, everyone. I'll just give a little bit of background about myself. I was born hearing, and then before kindergarten, we found out I had a progressive hearing loss. So slowly over time, I lost my hearing. I used hearing aids growing up, and then it got to the point where they're not effective anymore, and in the process of getting a cochlear implant now. My mom was always supportive of my speech. She was very involved with my speech therapy, and she was also very supportive of supporting the sign language. Unfortunately, at that time, there were not a lot of resources for sign language, so my mom would go to the library or try to find community classes to support that. Unfortunately, in high school, they had ASL classes, and I got to learn through that way. So that's about me. I also went to the U, and I learned a lot about the strong LSL program they have. And I started working for USDB, and they trained me about the ASL program. And I realized now all those education opportunities helped me a lot with PIP. So I'll explain a little bit about our PIP program. So our main goal is to provide service in the natural environment, mostly the home, but it could be the store, it could be daycare, it could be grandma's house. We try to fit the family's needs. It's up to age 3. We have a lot of teamwork in our department. We have the parent advisor, that is the teacher, and they were the ones who do the home visits. Then we also have other staff members that provide services, such as the deaf mentor, the ASL specialist, and the LSL specialist. And they all work together to provide the resources the family needs. The LSL specialist provides listening time, and that's where we have one-on-one time with the parent, the child, and the LSL specialist. We're really excited. In December, we're going to have a new LSL specialist. She is an SLP, and she's also an audiologist. She'll be a great support for our program. So our services, first we have in-home services that's provided by the parent advisor, and they assess and set goals for spoken language and ASL. We have our listening time, which is one-on-one time with the LSL specialist. We have ASL classes for in-person and online classes for families. We have playgroups, and that's more of an opportunity for families to meet each other and to create support for each other. It's a scary journey for some of these families. It's exciting at the same time, but sometimes they need a friend to go through the journey with them that's experiencing exactly the same thing. Story time, we have both ASL and spoken language for story time, and it's not for the kids really, it's really for the parents. It's for the parent to learn how to read to their child in spoken language, and also how to learn how to sign the story to their child. And then toddler group. This is for children 18 months and older, and the parent goes with the child, and it's 18 to 3 years old, and that's what I want to go in detail today. Okay, so our toddler group, what we did, I had the opportunity to fly out to Maine to observe their toddler group in their PIT program, Parent Infant Toddler Group. And it was very inspiring to see the teamwork and see how the parents we're able to support each other and see the kids exposed to multiple language. Wherever they turn, there's language everywhere. So what it looks like, we have the parent advisor and we have the deaf mentor. And they discuss what the strategy they're going to teach the parents. And then they also discuss the activities and how they can provide it both in ASL and spoken language. It's not one person interpreting for the other. They're providing the activity in spoken language and they're providing it in ASL as well. They work together to, what would be a good way to explain it is like tag. You see a child need this, they'll provide it. The child loses interest, another person steps in and they provide it. There's a lot of collaboration and there's always room for improvement, how we work together. So what's exciting about this is there's constant language. Doesn't matter where they look or where they hear, they're surrounded by language. And for these children, they need that constant language exposure to develop their minds. What's also exciting about this is that it supports their interests. If they're interested in this with speaking, then we support it in there. If they're interested in this with sign language, we're supporting it there. And so the child is leading with their strength. And this also opens new discoveries. Some parents may not realize that the child is interested in something, or maybe they don't realize that the child has a strength in something. So this opens new doors for the children. I have some videos so you have an opportunity to see how there's constant language, there's spoken language, and also ASL. You can see they're doing the same activity. There's spoken language there, there's parents interacting with their children, there's ASL. It doesn't matter what the child's strength is, they're being supported in the group. Here is another clip of how this mom, she supports both of them, and so she's not forced to choose between one group or the other. She can provide both for her child. I had one parent respond. They were very happy that we decided to combine the both. Last year it was separate and they had to pick one or the other. And that's really tough for parents of little children to go to something twice a week. Going to something once a week can be challenging, especially with nap time and snack time. So at that moment, I didn't realize that this was actually supporting parents that wanted to do both, so they weren't forced to pick one or the other. This is a response from someone, and I'll quickly read it. We have Love Toddler Group. I was hesitant about how ASL would be integrated into the group. I was surprised how well you were able to integrate ASL into the routine and how much the kids were interested in what you're doing. It actually has encouraged me to work on ASL at home, only in a tourist knowledge amount, but we have started working on it at home once a week. Rebecca is improving so much the last few weeks. She was on a plateau for about a month with small improvements, but now we are able to understand better what she wants, and the words she does know are getting clearer and clearer. It's been great getting the help from the FIP program has helped us keep pushing ourselves in the right direction to help Rebecca and to reflect on what we have done that really helped her. So these are additional benefits that at the time I didn't realize were happening, but I'm thrilled with these results. The parents aren't forced to choose. They can get the support they need for their child. I had one parent tell me she's very thrilled that they were both combined. Parents learn more about the child's strength. So some people think that the child won't be able to lead with their strengths. Actually, I had an opportunity to sub for the deaf mentor who did the sign. So I went up to one child who does primarily speaking and listening, and I started signing to her. The little girl looked at me and just turned her head and started talking to her mom. It wasn't her strength, apparently. Also, parents learn how to support their child's weakness. I was very excited about this. Just 2 stories. One child, she signs pretty well. Her speech isn't quite there. So we were pouring a drink into the cup, and the LSL teacher, the parent advisor, was saying, "Go stop," like that. And I was signing like that. So I kept doing, the little girl kept watching me the entire time. And then at the last cup that we poured, she yelled out, "Stop." And her parents were so thrilled because that was a new discovery for her. They were so excited about that. Another time we had music playing and all the kids were dancing. And then it would stop and you would hear an animal sound. So the parent advisor would focus on listening to the animal sound. And I would use the ASL to describe the animal, the cat or the whiskers or the tail moving. That's how we included both languages. So there's one little girl, her speech wasn't quite there, and the parents were really hoping to encourage her speech, but it just wasn't happening. So the little girl just stands there quietly the entire time. She saw me doing the animal characteristics, and she started copying me. And that's huge. And the mom was very excited about that. She was excited to see her child learning language. Another big thing is parents learn to respect each other's differences and support each other on their journey. We don't want to create an environment where they're judging each other for their choices or mistakes they might make or frustration that they experience along the way. We want to create an environment where they can respect each other's choices, their journey, and support each other with it. No parent needs judgment from another when they're going through this journey. It's scary for a lot of parents. So that's all I have with that. If you have any questions, I'm open to that.
Questions from board members? Vice Chair Ellis?
I don't have a question, but I have really appreciated this PowerPoint and display. I love hearing what you're doing and specific actions you're taking to help these children learn how to communicate better and more effectively. I have missed hearing the stories from USDB, and I just want to put out that I really enjoyed when we were regularly hearing things of student success and improvement in your school. So thank you for all the work that you're doing.
It's my pleasure. I do want to share some statistics that I got, some data. I sent out a survey to see how people were feeling about the toddler group. It has grown since we've done this. We actually have 2 in Salt Lake, and we have one parent that actually wants to go to both of them in Salt Lake. And now we're trying to set up one in South Utah County. So we had 13 out of 20 people respond. Let's see, one person was not happy with it, and I think that's the one that you heard from. We had 8 people that were satisfied with it. Then we had 4 people that wanted more days for it. So what we're seeing is a lot of support for this, and we're excited to see how supporting the children as well.
Okay. Board Member Cannon?
My questions were along those lines, like how many children do you have in a toddler group, and how often would that group be held?
Okay, it is once a week. We allow up to 8 kids per toddler group. Remember, we also had the parents that come as well, so we don't want it too tight. Let's see, up to 8 kids once a week.
And then the parents are learning ASL along with the children at the same time? Did I understand that correctly?
So in that environment, it wouldn't be the goal to learn ASL, but it's supported.
Okay.
So the parents can learn ASL from a deaf mentor, they can learn it from an ASL class, online or in person, and then also from the parent advisor, they support that as well. So it's, parents do sometimes ask questions about how do you sign this or how do I sign that. It's more about developing language in general. We provide a strategy, sometimes it's the same things such as repetition or following the child's lead. Sometimes it's different, like acoustic highlighting, and then we'll do emphasis on facial expressions. But either way, the parent can support the child's strength and then also support their weaknesses.
Any other questions or comments? Director Morgan, I just want to throw a couple things out there. I heard from a few parents. I have a slight hearing problem myself, and so I kind of stay close to that hearing community a little bit there, of those that are having challenges. But from your program and that, there's a lot of confidence and enthusiasm that comes from you and your staff. And the biggest takeaway that I get from parents is they have hope. So thank you for what you do and your staff. You can pass that on from me.
Oh, I love my staff too. I do love them. Interesting, my staff told me that they become the parents' best friend for the next 3 years. And it's basically true. The parents learn to love these people.
Very good. Superintendent, do you have anything more you want to add?
No, just that I think this is one of the highlights and the strengths of our programs. When we can get them started right, we see such fantastic outcomes later on in life. And there will always be some that come in later that miss that window for various reasons, like what we've talked about. But those that go through our parent-infant program have great, bright futures ahead of them.
Thank you. Next up, we have, and I'm not sure how the superintendent will report will top what we just heard, so the time is yours.
I won't top it for sure. That was the highlight. Just a couple of things in my superintendent's report before we wrap up our meeting today. First of all, just wanted to report back. We've requested feedback from the superintendents that visited us from across the country for our League of Innovative Schools meetings in mid-October, and it was tremendous. I had some colleagues that had visited me previously and came back again because they wanted to meet all of the staff, and they just were overwhelmed. We had a lunchtime experience where we kind of passed the microphone around, and I said, in all seriousness, we're grateful for the compliments you've given us, but we would like feedback on how we can improve. And so we started going through, and one guy actually said, I've cried 3 times today, and I'm a superintendent. I don't cry, but anyway, it was just really, really nice that way. So it was a success, and we're all breathing a lot easier now that that's behind us. Second thing, an update on the Springville building. It looks like we're very close to getting permission to start groundbreaking, hopefully mid-November. That's what we're looking at now. The groundwork will be done, and it will sit there for about 90 days, and then in the springtime, the building will start going up. It will most likely be ready in December next year. So that's exciting. And we'll have to make some adjustments in how we shift mid-year and all that, but you take what you can get at this point. So we're glad to be moving along on that again. And then the final thing I wanted to share with you is I wanted to just let you know, unless you tell me not to, I plan to proceed this way, but I would like to be transparent and let you know. This week I had a call with Tracy Nuttall, who works for Legislative Research. Leah Voorhees and I have been participating on a little work group at the request of the legislature to recodify the special ed law and also the law concerning USDB. We got the special ed law done, and that's going to be a committee bill that goes to the session and looks great. They're technical changes mostly, nothing too earth-shattering. The USDB bill, we gave feedback and input, but because of the special sessions and other things, that got put on a back burner, so the committee does not have time to meet now before the session and make that a committee bill. So she said we could do one of two things. We could wait another year, now that we've started down that road, and maybe do it a year from now if they decide to as a committee bill, which just means it comes up at the beginning of the session and it goes through pretty easily. Or she said you could just find a sponsor and run the bill with all the changes that we talked about. And so I would like to proceed that way, and I've talked to a couple different legislators so far that might be interested in sponsoring it. I would like you to be aware of those changes. They weren't all generated by me necessarily, but anyway, if that would be okay, I'd like to proceed that way, unless you have a problem with it. And I want you to be in the loop and know everything that we're talking about too. So I would send out the changes that we're proposing and so forth that this little group discussed.
If we could get that as soon as possible, that would be really great. And if we have questions on that, we can certainly bring them forth in our next board meeting. But I wouldn't kill any momentum, but it'd be nice to have the board's approval
Yes.
behind it as this is being facilitated. So the work that you've done to date, if you could package that up and get to Ms. Lorraine, and we'll circulate it to the board.
Right. And some of it, like one thing, for example, is there. One of them, for example, is the report that we have to give every year.
What?
There's some strange language in the.
It's on, isn't it?
It's on. Okay.
Well, there we go.
Anyway, one of them is just asking the legislature, is this really what you want in your report every month, every year from us? You know, and like that. Others are just things that reflect current practice or IDEA changes or whatever. So I'll send that out to you soon, and then maybe in our next meeting, a month from now, we can kind of go through those
That'd be great.
proposals.
We'll make sure we have enough time. Any questions or, Board Member Lear, will you?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I did turn them, I thought I turned
It's not,
it's not,
can you grab one next?
oh, because I didn't enter.
You didn't enter your code.
I didn't, thank you.
Board Member Reby, will you take care of Board Member Lear there?
I know I need a technical.
It is late on Friday.
Okay, there we go, thank you.
Okay,
My
Board Member Lear.
machine's fault. I've almost forgotten my comment. I appreciate that you send that information out because, and I hope that that's something we can discuss with the school districts and charters we work with, because I think sometimes we forget that things that happen with USDB do affect charters and traditional school districts. And so I want to make sure that even what we see as technical changes or minor changes are things that are comfortable to the system or that work with the whole system. So I would really appreciate, and I hope that in doing that, we're able to discuss those among ourselves and with the LEAs that we work with.
Great idea. Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments for the superintendent? I'd like to say thank you for your hospitality, good lunch and hospitality in our last meeting there. We met at your facility. It's always refreshing, so thank you. I'm not seeing, we don't have any reason to go into an executive session, so I'm seeking a motion to adjourn. We have a motion. Do we have a second? Second. Any discussion to the motion? Seeing none, let's vote. All in favor, say aye. Those opposed? Voting was unanimous.